So I feel like most people do like the get ready with me videos. I'm a mom, so we're gonna be doing fold laundry with me. We're gonna start a new trend. Yeah, fold laundry with me video. Everyone has been asking me to finish my HS story, like when it started, how it went, how I've gotten to where I am today. I started it on Instagram, but the reels are just too short, and this has to be a longer story. I hope that's okay. It has to be longer to give it justice, because it is my life. So this is my HS story, and this is also Play-Doh stuck to my daughter's favorite sweater. My HS started on my groin, we'll say bikini line, when I was 12. I didn't know what to make of it. They were just these little spots that look like really bad ingrown hairs. But if you have HS, you know that they're not ingrown hairs, but like, if you don't know what it is, it's what you kind of assume. It's the closest thing that you've probably experienced. So really, really bad ingrown hair looking spots. They hurt, but I don't really say anything because of obviously feeling embarrassed. So I'm just like, it'll go away. And it kind of went away, and then it would kind of come back. My mom eventually gets me this book that I'm sure most females on here that grew up in the mid 1990s got, the whole American Girl body book for girls. That was a puberty book I was given. I don't know how many people were explained puberty through a book, but that's how it went for me. So I read this puberty book for girls, and it told you about, periods, growing hair, your boobs, all of that puberty girl stuff. And by the time I finished the book, I was like, excuse me, where is the crotch acne? Like, you talked about the face acne, what about the acne? I need a whole chapter on that. So that's when I had the first inclination that something might be wrong. This book didn't have, because it was still for at least for me, it was like for 12-year-olds, it didn't really talk about STDs, which I'm really glad that it didn't, because I would have instantly jumped to that conclusion. Wasn't sexually active, but it would have been like a toilet seat or like some thing that you think of when you're a child. So I was really glad that, at least for me, I was just like, okay, something's off. It's some sort of weird acne. Felt really embarrassed still. Did the typical going to mom. Mom said we need to make a doctor's appointment. Didn't really seem overly concerned. Just kind of like, this must be a weird puberty thing. We go to my family doctor, and surprisingly, this family doctor, when I was at the age of 12, looks at me and says, it is just puberty. This is something that happens to lots of people when they go through puberty. When you're done with puberty, it'll go away. And I was like, oh, okay, it's not that weird. It's not that out there. Still embarrassing and horrible and painful, but I guess I just will grow out of it. It's just like acne on your face. It can be really bad when you're young, going through all that. It'll get better. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to wait this out. Which is what I did. This continued all through from when I was 12 until I was like 16. And then I noticed at 16, it started getting a bit better. And I was just like, yes, like it's happening. It's going away. And the shocking thing is by the time I was 18, it went away completely. It just disappeared. There was nothing left. All that was left was some pretty extensive scarring. But I was like, woo, puberty, at least this part of puberty, done. I am done with this. And I feel a little emotional. I really thought I was done with it for the rest of my life. And I remember celebrating, waking up every day and just like looking and being like, oh my gosh, it's getting better. And at this point in time, I only had it in like my thighs and like bikini line. I don't even think I had any on my bum at that point in time. So I was just like, oh, I'm done. Just celebrating just with myself, because no one really knew, and I didn't talk to people about it. So I was just like partying in my room over the fact that I no longer had crotch acne. Then we get to the point where I am 21 and I meet a guy that I really like. His name's Trevor. He's now my husband. Spoiler alert. Spoil that part of the story. He becomes my first boyfriend, and we're dating, and I know that we're going to start exploring intimacy, sex. So I decide to go on birth control. Nothing happens with the birth control at first, but I will touch base on when we started having sex and being intimate. Trevor did notice my extensive scarring, and I will never forget one time he pointed it out, and he was like, can I ask what this is? And it was pretty early on in our relationship, and I just kind of looked at him funny and was like, it's just scarring. I got like acne down there when I was a teenager, but it was like puberty and I grew out of it. And I remember actually being a little offended. He was my first relationship. I was not his first. He's 5 years older than me. Started dating around a more normal age. He was like my first relationship, and I was 21, almost 22. So he had a few girlfriends, a few other partners, and like I'm like, none of them had like anything like this. Like almost every chick gets their period. Like I'm literally the only one that you've noticed this on. Like yeah, mine's worse, but why are you pointing this out? Like rude. That's how I felt. I was like, that's kind of rude. Like you shouldn't point that out. Like, so I definitely felt embarrassed, but I felt like it was more like on him than on me to point something like that out. I was like, it'd be like pointing out someone's like scarring on their face with their acne is how I felt. Still embarrassed, but also like, WTF, man, don't call it out like that. He accepted the answer because you have to remember there's no active spots at the time. It's just this like a purpley blue scarring, the indentations. He was just like, okay. And we totally moved on. Nothing rude was actually said, to be clear. I just thought him pointing it out was rude. But on his part, I totally get why he would ask what's up with all that. Then what happened? Okay, so now I start getting sick. The birth control pills do not agree with me. I am not going to list the name brands of the different birth control pills. I would prefer people go and do their own research when it comes to birth control pills. I also can't remember the names of all of these. So the first birth control pill that I tried instantly started making me feel very depressed. I had horrible brain fog. My sex drive as someone who was just entering their like sexual life tanked. And it's like the fun, spicy beginning of a relationship, and it was just gone. Oh, I didn't think this would make me emotional. Huh. It's interesting processing things with you guys. Then I started getting a spot, and I was like, what the heck and Bob? I thought I was done with this. Why is it coming back? I then wanted to go off the birth control pill because I'm like, I feel like it has to be connected in some way because puberty is hormonal and this pill is also hormonal. It's changing my hormones. So I really wanted off of it, but at the same time, a very new relationship had just been started and my partner was not a fan of the idea of us not being on a contraceptive. And neither was my mom, who I discussed this with a little bit. I felt like I was pushed a little into staying on it because getting pregnant in a new relationship just to the whole world seemed like something that was far worse than me staying on this thing that honestly felt like was killing me. I'm not gonna lie, I felt so terrible. Me and my partner then eventually decided that I would go off of the birth control pill. I tried 3 different kinds, including a mini pill, and try an IUD. Oh my gosh. I go and get a Manara, I will say the name of this one, a Manara or Manara, I don't know how to pronounce it though, but you know what I'm talking about. It's an extremely popular IUD. Typically this IUD is used, from what I now understand, in women that have already had a child. I had not had a child, obviously. I get this thing in and it feels like stabbing all the time. Now, given this story is me, spoiler, getting an IUD, that was too big for me. It feels awful. I have the same symptoms that I already described before, but so much worse. Like, it's debilitating. I break out with full-blown facial acne like I never have before. I quickly started putting on weight. My inflammation got out of control. And my HS came back worse. Well, what I thought was crotch acne, sorry, came back in a way that I didn't even know existed. I now know with the knowledge that I have that as a teenager, I had stage 1 HS. It was manageable. Yes, it was painful, and I never had breaks from it, but I could manage it. My HS now the crotch acne now turns into something that is debilitating. It goes up to a stage 3 within 6 months of me getting this IUD. I want to go off the IUD, but once again, a newer relationship. I don't know what to do. Contraceptives. I came from a family that was very, I'm going to say conservative in the sex department, so I felt like I had to navigate a lot of this alone. New relationship. I didn't know at all at the time if this relationship was going to be a relationship that was going to last, if it was going to be something that was more short term. At this point, we're still not even a year into the relationship. Or maybe 6 months. 6 months into the relationship, and at that point I would have been on the IUD for about 3 months, so it's really bad. Fast forward another 3 months, me and my boyfriend go on this huge Europe trip. It was so cool. We went to Europe for a month and just backpacked around, and at this time my HS was sitting at like a solid 2. and it put a damper on things for me, but it was still one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So even with stage 2 HS, still having a great time, struggling with my mental health because of the IUD. We get back from this trip, we're like 10 months coming up onto a year of being together, and me and him are just like at a loss of what's going on with me. I should touch base that when all of my HS symptoms, cysts, lesions, open wounds, at this point it was getting pretty bad, were all in my groin still. I got them on my bum for the first time as well. It spread to that region. He was nothing but supportive, sweet, kind, helpful, understanding. Oh, I'm gonna need a minute. And for that, I am truly grateful. This was when I started experiencing shame. Shame is another way deeper form of embarrassment. I was no longer embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was trying to hide it. I refused to talk about it. So he had no idea at all. He had like an inclination based upon like me walking. Obviously, it looked like it hurt, but I was not talking about it very much. I eventually did have an absolute breakdown one day about it. And it was a pretty terrible breakdown, just sobbing, just shaking. I was just in so much pain. And I'm like, this all started when I went on birth control. I want this IUD out. And he was just like, yeah, we have to get that out. We'll figure out something else. We started researching. It's like family planning, calendar, something, different forms of birth control. We use what I just consider the calendar method, where I track my ovulation, and everyone does it differently. I simply just know when I'm ovulating, which is the window that's where you're highly likely to get pregnant. You can look into that whole thing. Everyone does things differently. We had our own way that we decided as a couple to handle our family planning without me putting anything in my body, relying upon the Flow app. That's what I use for my way to track my ovulation, and condoms. So we switched over to that. I got my IUD out, and okay. So when I go to get my IUD out, which is maybe a year later, a little less than a year of having it in, when I got back from my Europe trip, I was like, it's just happening. I'm getting this out. I go in to get it out, and I ended up having a different doctor. I think she was like a resident, take out my IUD, because the same doctor that was like, this is puberty, put in the whatever referral to go get it put in. So this other doctor looks at my groin region and was just like, that looks painful. And I was like, it really is, and I don't know why it's happening. And I was told that it was puberty and it was just gonna go away, and she was just confused. She was like, no, that's not a thing. She's very gentle with me about it, but she's like, that's not a thing, which, I mean, kind of made me freak out a little. And she's like, I'm going to refer you to a dermatologist. You should really see a dermatologist about this. So I was like, okay, I hate the idea of having some person stare at my crotch, but sure. I mean, you're already all up in there. Now, my boyfriend is also really concerned because my mental health is just non-existent. It is terrible. I'm pouring myself into work in my business at this point in time. I was a hairstylist, and I was self-employed, to just avoid having to think about or feel any of the feelings that I had about the fact that this puberty condition had made a return, or the fact that I hated my body, that I was convinced that my boyfriend was going to leave me over it. He is now becoming Dr. Google, and he eventually finds HS, Hidradenitis Suppurativa, article online, and he becomes quite excited to show me. Yeah. He's like, I think I found what you have. I think it's this. We should really find that out. We should ask questions about this when you see the dermatologist. And I was just pretty much point blank, like, there is no way that is what I have. The pictures were identical. I had like stage 3. Not quite as bad as a lot of the pictures they show you, because those pictures are very progressed HS, but I was close. I was like, nope, because you see that part right at the bottom there where it says no cure? That is not what I have. Full denial. It's like, we're moving on. I'm not talking about this. He wanted to talk about it, but took a hint that wasn't happening. It's not what I have. So, couldn't guess. I go to the dermatologist. He's Dr. Google and just wants me to get better. He kind of wants to go into the appointment with me, but I shut that down and I'm like, no, you're not coming in, because I was just dead set on I was not going to ask any questions about hidradenitis suppurativa, because he wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't going to bring it up. He was just going to tell me to use some sort of cream and it was going to go away. Or that like I just had another bout of freaking puberty, or my hormones got thrown off by the birth control, which is kind of what happened. But I was like, those words are not allowed to be uttered at this appointment. I go in. This dermatologist sucked. I'm thankful for him. He does diagnose me, but he had me like take my pants off while sitting in the chair to show him and like open my legs up. I didn't even have the dignity of at least laying on like the doctor's table. This is like the beginning of some of the things that felt very shameful about my HS. Like it really wasn't very, like I didn't feel like I had much dignity at that point in time. It was not a good experience. He had like a magnifying glass. Like he didn't need a magnifying glass. Like it was very obvious. He tells me that it's HS and then tells me that all these different medications that I could go on for it. And my ears are ringing at this point. I'm trying to understand it, but the one thing I understand is all the medications this doctor is telling me to go on, I would have to go back on birth control to take, because if you're taking these medications that he was recommending and you get pregnant, it causes just extreme birth defects in the baby. And I'm like, I can't go back on freaking birth control. And I'm like trying to explain to him the birth control did this to me. And he's like, no, it didn't, and you need to go back on it. He then tells me, for the first time I hear about Humira, and tells me in Canada it'll cost me $30,000 a year. I don't have that kind of money. I was like making only a little bit more than that in like the whole year. So I was like, okay, well, honestly, I was just like, well, my life's over. It's over. I hate everything. My hopes and dreams, the aspirations are over. My boyfriend's gonna leave me. I will die alone. And it's the first time I started using the words gross and disgusting to describe myself, because I was like, this is me forever now. He was not very helpful. He gave me this HS pamphlet. I wish I still had them, but I ended up purging them, because those pamphlets, in my opinion, were terrible, because they had a one page that was patient testimonials, and the testimonials were everything I just said. They're like, I live in pain every day. I'm no longer social because of this. And then they gave you a few tips on how to manage it, but it wasn't how to overcome the fact that you're in pain all the time. So I fell into a nasty depression. I just poured myself into my work. I was in so much pain. It was like stage 3 at this time. Just wearing clothes was so painful. I refused to be naked around my boyfriend at this point. I completely withdrew, refused to talk to him about it at all, and told no one. And I told him that he was not allowed to tell a soul. He did, I found out later, and talked to his mom about it, because he needed support, because someone who's going through this with someone else often needs support, and I was so mad at him. So he never dared. That's my dishwasher. Good job, dishwasher. I'll wait for that to end. Okay, as I was saying, never dared tell another soul, and I told no one. I briefly told my mom, but besides that, kept it to myself. It eventually got so bad that I ended up with a new family doctor. I went to her. The fact that it was a female was helpful. The dermatologist that I feel like wasn't very professional about it was also male, which was difficult for me in general, because I grew up very conservatively, so that was hard to have a man looking at my bits. So I went to her and I'm like, I am not okay, and I have HS. Like, is there anything else that I can do? She put me on 4 straight months of antibiotics. After 3 weeks, my HS went away, and then it was gone for all of the months. And then I was like, woo, this was helpful, like, awesome. And then I would say the week after the 4 months stopped and I was off the antibiotics, it came back just as bad. So I was just stuck in this revolving door of struggling, not getting any assistance, just, this is my life now, and very depressed and anxious about it. It sucked. Then randomly, my husband, or my boyfriend at the time, was working as an arborist, so like certified lumberjack, and he ended up unfortunately getting a piece of a wood chip in his eye. We went to the hospital, we drove him there, and we randomly, and the first time in my entire life, I saw the words Hidradenitis Suppurativa on a flyer on the wall. And it was for a dermatologist an hour out of the city that I lived in that was running trials for hidradenitis suppurativa medication. My boyfriend, whose eye is like swollen shut and he's worried he's going to lose his eyesight forever, jumps out of his chair and takes a picture of it and is like, we have to look into this. And I'm just like, it's a Canadian freaking emergency room department. Way too many people because they're always like understaffed, no fault of nurses. So he jumps up and he's just like, oh my gosh, takes a picture of it. And I'm like, so embarrassed. He's like, you have to look into this. I procrastinated for a bit because I'm still in kind of denial of even what I have because I don't want to have that. And I'm like, okay, I will look into it. I end up booking an appointment and going in. They don't have any spots left. I don't get a lot of information about the actual trial itself because they don't know if they can put me into it. But she says that she can start doing cortisol shots into my affected like cysts and lesions, which will help until there's an opening for me to start the trial. But I have to pay out of pocket because I'm not one of her patients. So I ended up having to pay $113 for each of these shots, and I was sometimes getting 4 to 5 a go. I got to the point where I was getting them at least once a month. I was spending thousands on these cortisol shots, which did work. It got me from like a 3 down to a 1. It was far more manageable, but extremely painful. I was already working so much, and now with this extra expense, I was working even more, and I would do all of my morning clients, take a break in the afternoons, that's typically when it's the slowest for like doing hair, drive an hour, get these shots, put ice packs in my pants, drive back, and then work late into the evening. It was a very difficult chapter for me, especially financially. She then said I could get laser hair removal, which could work really well for me, and referred me over to her her esthetician, that worked in department. The esthetician's like, well, you have red toned hair. I don't know how well this is going to work, but then told me how even just the laser itself can help with inflammation. I then spent thousands on the laser hair removal. That didn't do anything for me, given red toned hair. So like, you try what you want to try. Probably spent like $2,000, guys, on that off my credit card that I eventually paid off. It did nothing. It didn't help at all. So that was fun. Sarcasm. So then they eventually have a spot open up for me to go and do this trial. And I really didn't enjoy the intake. I had to lay on this table, obviously no pants on, and they were taking pictures and using a measuring tape, and just it felt very invasive. The room that they were doing this in also had like this storage area for like things that all of the estheticians would use. So people were coming in and out while I was just naked. I did not enjoy the experience. And then after that intake, they sent me home with like a pile of papers, which was like the legal things I'd have to sign to start this medication trial. And when I got to the point of all of the potential side effects, and one of them being that they couldn't promise me that this wouldn't like cause me to become infertile or affect my fertility, I was like, there's no way I can do this because I really want to have kids. And I don't even know if this trial drug is going to work, and the risk is not worth the potential reward. This sounds bad, but I'm like, if other people feel like the risk is worth the reward, I'll just have to wait. And if the medication ever becomes available, then I will thank the people that did the trials and go on it then. The dermatologist didn't like it when I emailed back telling her that I would not be taking part in the trial, but I would like to continue on with the injections. And I received an email back that since I wasn't, very interestingly worded, working her way through things, that I was never one of her patients and she can't continue on doing the injections. Called my old dermatologist to try and get into them to do the injections. The injections were more, I don't remember how much, but there were even more there. I would have to do another intake because it'd been so long since I could see them. I did not feel comfortable with him. And then at this point, it's 2009, the end of 2019 is where we're at now. And I'd be going to the pandemic. And at this point, I am now off work and I'm able to just pretty much sit at home, relax. It's the beginning of the pandemic. I think for most people it was very scary. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be trying to go out and figure this out. I'm just gonna stay home and rest. In Canada, we went through a pandemic lockdown, like a huge lockdown in March of 2019. I remember it was March 7th because it was March 8th. No, March 14th. Not that it matters. A week after my birthday, the whole country went into a lockdown. And we were in that lockdown for months and months and months. I was just relaxing, staying home, just dealing with it. At this point, I started opening up more to my partner my boyfriend, about how I was feeling, and it was affecting me because he was also off work. Both of our jobs we weren't allowed to go to during this lockdown. So with us being forced to be together 24/7, I had to start opening up about it. And he didn't run away. I was still very afraid of that at that point, but started opening up about it. him really being like, we gotta look into this whole hidradenitis suppurativa thing. It's what you have. We need to figure it out. And then I think it was a few months that went by in which he's like, I've been reading a lot. That diet can significantly help HS. And I didn't want to believe that because I love food. Food was also a huge part of my coping mechanism to get through all of those difficult times. So I go, okay. Like, I get so bad that I'm like, I'm just going to try it. Information on what to eat and what not to eat with HS is very hard because everybody is completely different. What affects one person will not affect the other. I eventually learned that the autoimmune protocol is a great way to figure out what your specific food triggers are, and I found a course that doctors and nutritionists can take to learn about the autoimmune protocol diet. It's not really a diet, but like just that protocol of eliminating foods and reintroducing them to figure out what your triggers are. You had to have some sort of certification to even take this course. I sent in a long email explaining that I wanted to take this course mainly for learning for myself, but I was a hairstylist and a personal trainer. I was a certified personal trainer, and within getting my personal training certification, I also got some nutritional certifications as well. They accepted those, which was really nice, and I got accepted into the program. This program cost me over $1,000. It was very expensive. And I did the whole program and became an AIP certified coach. And then I coached myself through it. I'm a very extreme person. If I'm going to do something, I'm all in or all out. Something I'm working now that I'm in my late 20s, I'm not leaning into so hard as being so extreme. But I took all of my learnings and jumped into the deep end. I spent a year learning what my food triggers were. And then once I learned what my food triggers were, I vowed to never eat them again. And at this point in time, I had learned that milk, oh goodness, it's like milk, sugar, a bunch of processed ingredients. Oh, the biggest point I'm going to make on what all of my food triggers were nightshade vegetables. So potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, there's a few others I can't remember because I don't like them, that if I ate, I would get a spot. And then through doing this elimination diet, my HS went away that year. I went into remission. I did not have the active symptoms of HS. You always have HS because you cannot cure it. I was in remission because the symptoms were not presenting at the time. And I thought that is how I needed to stay, because when I didn't have the HS visibly and feeling it, I wasn't ashamed. I still didn't like the scarring, etc. But I no longer felt so ashamed and like my boyfriend was going to leave me, even though he gave me absolutely no reasons on why I was thinking that. He was nothing but supportive. But I was like, I have to stay in remission. And this spiraled into disordered eating. Because I'm like, my HS is caused by food, bad. Food, HS. So I got to the point where I just wasn't eating enough. I started losing a ton of weight. This was the only time that my boyfriend got really emotional, to be honest, was when he saw me struggling with food, not eating enough, doing more poorly. I was doing more poorly because of this disordered eating pattern that I got into than when I had like stage 3 HS. I was really unwell, in remission, but unwell. So we started working together on making more meals, trying to eat more calories because I wasn't eating anything processed. It was just honestly a lot of like beef and rice and just like root vegetables. And I ended up starting to get better on my own. I was doing really well. My HS was in remission. I had put some weight back on and was doing well. That was a really nice little chapter. And we finally came out of, I think it was our second lockdown in Canada, and we were engaged at this point. I got engaged while I was still struggling heavily with my HS, which should have been an indication that this guy wasn't just going to run away because of it. But you know, mental health doesn't work like that. I'm still very frightened about that. So I was doing well. We decided that I really wanted kids. I was like, I am ready. We hadn't gotten married yet at that point because lockdowns kept coming and going, and people were losing so much money booking venues and then only getting like the deposits back and stuff. It was a whole thing. So we're like, it's whatever. We want to have a baby. So we started trying for a baby. I ended up getting pregnant on my second try. I'm only stating that because I know a lot of people with HS are afraid that it affects their fertility. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the answers to that, but I was able to get pregnant the second try, so quite easily. Very thankful for that. So then pregnancy equates to cravings, and I started getting cravings really bad. And I remember the first time I broke my diet that I had put myself on was with a potato chip. Potatoes are my biggest food trigger, and nothing happened. And so a few days later, I had like 2 chips, then 3, then 4, and you can imagine it just slid down into me eating anything and everything while I was pregnant. Nothing happened. I was perfectly fine for my whole pregnancy. I didn't get a single spot, and I was just a pregnant lady eating all of the food. So for whatever reason, the pregnancy hormones for that pregnancy just made my HS go boop, just away it goes. It was nice. I still had extreme nausea though for my whole pregnancy, acid reflux. I wonder how much of that was because I was eating these trigger foods. I don't know, but I didn't have any spots. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm just better now. And the chronic illness knows that when you're better for a little bit, you're like, it's gone, I'm cured, woo. I had my daughter, and within weeks of having her, my HS just comes back and goes straight to a stage 1. I tried to eat more towards my original structured eating that had me in remission, but I now have a newborn. I don't have time to cook the meals that I was cooking before. They took forever to make. So I'm eating the best I can for the situation, but to make a long story short, by the time my daughter was 6 months old, my HS was at a stage 3 and the worst it had ever been in my entire life. I think a lot of it was with the postpartum hormones. It was horrible. It was one of the most difficult chapters of my whole life, taking care of a newborn baby with full-blown HS. It had spread to my groin. My bum was really bad, under my boobs. I think I got one in my armpit then. Like, it was really little though. I'm very lucky that my armpits don't really knock on wood at this point in time. But the ones under my boobs were quite horrible, and I was breastfeeding, so you can imagine how much that sucked. When you breastfeed, you're holding a baby, they kind of rest here. I had a bunch. It sucked, but I made my way through it. It's what you do when you're a mom. And at that point in time, I had started this Instagram. Well, I'm going to post this on YouTube, but I started my Instagram and was talking with more people. I was far more open with my fiance. He's my fiance at this point, but still not super open. Just not doing well, trying to figure things out, but just so focused on my baby. My fiance can see that I'm doing really poorly at this point. He personally experienced how helpful therapy and talking therapy was for him for some stuff he was going through, and really wanted me to go see a therapist. I did not want to, as most people that haven't done therapy don't want to. I threw a fit, wasn't going to do it. Nope. When my daughter was 8 months old, I finally gave in. And the emotions. That first appointment was a lot. I talked a lot about my HS and how much pain I was in. It was the first time I was really open with someone, and I was so sleep deprived. I was just like, oh, here it is. Just more than a decade, because I started my symptoms at 12 and was diagnosed at 22, so way over a decade at this point, because it is now 2022 that this part of this all happens. Just vomit all of this onto her, and she recognizes that I have some serious self-image issues, still don't have great eating habits. I'm also refusing to let my fiance help me with the baby because I think I need to do it all myself to prove that I'm worthy. We start working on some stuff. She helps me so much. She helps me figure out how to manage my food in a healthy way. Me telling myself I could never eat certain foods ever again wasn't healthy, but going, I don't want to eat this right now because I don't like how it makes me feel. That's healthier. We work through a bunch of that stuff together, and I start doing better. I never go back into remission. So this is like late 2022. I'm not going back into remission, and I'm not trying to go back into remission. I'm just trying to have healthy eating habits and a healthier self-image. Going in from late 2022 into early 2023, I finally just open up with my fiance about it. I'm totally open at this point, far less ashamed. Finally coming to the conclusion that this guy is not going to leave me over my HS. If anything, what's hurting my relationship is me not talking about it, not being open about it, purposely keeping him in the dark about it when he wants to help me. Making him watch me suffer without being let in was far more damaging, given me saying that he was a safe person to let in. And then, because I'm now using my Instagram account more, I see people talking about deroofing surgery. And I'm like, that sounds great. I end up seeing a lot of people that I follow. HS Heroes was the first account that I saw information put out about deroofing surgery. Reached out to them. She said that she had her deroofing surgery done in Edmonton, Alberta, which is where she's from. Edmonton, Alberta is a province in Canada. I'm from Ontario, Canada, which is very far away. This country's huge. It's far away. So I was like, and she was telling me about how helpful it was and how much she liked this dermatologist. And I really was like, I just feel like I need to contact these people. I sent them a message on Instagram being like, I need help. I had a baby. This HS is out of control. The biggest reason that I was struggling with it is the cysts open and they refused to close. They were just open wounds. I had to have bandages over them at all times or I had no mobility. I couldn't walk. It was so bad in my bikini line. My mobility was shot. It was terrible. I said the wrong age. My daughter's 8 months old at this point. And I'm just like, okay, I need help. I messaged them being like, I need help. And all of my spots are refusing to close. They're just open wounds. I'm from Ontario, but if I came to Alberta, am I allowed to do that? We have a free healthcare system here. Our tax dollars pay for it. We have pretty high taxes, honestly. But that gives us access to free healthcare. But there is rules within the healthcare. And I didn't know if one of the rules would be that since I'm from Ontario, I can only seek not services, procedures, I guess, in Ontario. Karen? Oh my gosh, why can't I remember her name? I've been talking for like almost an hour. Oh my god, this is so long. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say Karen. I hope that I have her name right. She's an absolute doll. And they're like, we can help you if you get a referral from your doctor to us. And even if you don't, the lovely Karen was like, I will try to see what I can do. We should be able to get you help. Like, we want to help you. And this made me cry so much because I had not really found anyone that I felt like wanted to just simply be an advocate for me. It was the first time I felt like a healthcare professional was advocating for me. Called my family doctor, this new one. She's wonderful. She sends the referral right over. But this healthcare system's not paying for me to get there. I was incredibly just blessed that between my husband and my parents, we were able to afford the plane tickets to get me to Edmonton, Alberta, which is like a 4.5-hour flight, I think. And this is all taking place in January of 2023. Like the end of January, this is all happening. And my daughter is now 10 months old. So I don't even have a 1-year-old yet. So I get up very early on Thursday morning. We had stayed the night in Toronto because that's where the airport is. I got on a plane. I went by myself, which is crazy. Navigated the Toronto airport, which is an insane airport. It is huge and chaotic. Just bring like a carry-on, get on the plane, go to Edmonton, Alberta, hang out in the airport for quite a few hours, get on a taxi, and then get to the dermatology office with Dr. Keeling. Dr. Keeling is wonderful, and I owe him so much. Dermatologist, he's the one that ends up doing my surgery. I go there, I've talked with Karen. Karen fills in Dr. Keeling about everything that's happened. He was great. I did not feel all of the not good feels that I had with previous dermatologists. I was very comfortable because I felt like he really cared and he really understood. This de-roofing surgery just takes off the layer of skin that is the affected area and a little bit around it, and then they honestly dig out the skin underneath to get rid of all of just the infection and everything that's in there. I ended up having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 between my bikini line, the inside of my bum cheek, and one that was on my tailbone. The tailbone one was terrible. I had all of those done. The ones under my breasts at this point were manageable, and I just wanted to keep it to at least this area, especially with still nursing my daughter. So I get all of those done. The experience was wonderful for considering what I had done. I was totally numbed out, obviously. You're not like put out with like gas. It's just numbing local. You get it done and you can go. All of the bandages are put on. This taxi driver was nice enough to wait for me because the appointment took about an hour. He waited for me. I tipped him well. I get back in the taxi, back to the airport. I have to now wait in the airport for almost 2 hours before I get back on a plane and go back to Toronto. So I was on the plane for about 4.5 hours right after the surgery. It was a lot, especially to navigate by myself because my husband stayed back, well, my fiance at the time stayed back with my daughter in Toronto. I land, get to the airport, get on a taxi, get back to the room. It's now midnight at this point. A long day. I think I woke up at 5 a.m. in Ontario, went to Alberta, I came back, was back in the same hotel room by midnight. Ended up having to pump because I was nursing and my boobs were just engorged, so I had to pump both sides. He had something to feed her that night. I went to bed. We woke up the next day. We ate breakfast, and then I was in a car for 3.5 hours to get back to my house. And that was way worse than the flight because I didn't have any numbing cream or things. I hadn't quite figured out the best way to bandage all of this. It was very hard. It was extremely hard. The healing from the surgery took about 2 months to fully heal. The spots that had the surgery performed on them are still good. those spots have not returned, and I'm extremely thankful for that. So I consider that part of the surgery a success. If you do look at my Instagram, there was a period of time that I was not pleased with the results from my surgery, but it's because I think my mindset was incorrect, that I wanted to get, because I got technically all the spots that were really bad off of this area. So I thought since those were removed, my HS would just be like in remission. I got new spots. I have a bunch of new spots as we speak. That's just how, in my opinion, surgery is going to work. It's going to alleviate those spots. You're going to get new ones. You still have HS. It's not like they're removing the HS from your body. They're just removing the affected areas. So I'm back up to 1, 2, 3 spots, groin bum, and then I have 2 underneath my breasts. That have happened since that year, because we are now like January 2nd, 2024 is where we're at. So January 2023 is when I had the surgery done. I ended up getting a new spot maybe, honestly, like a month. It didn't take long to get a new spot. So then I was still in therapy, still discussing what I wanted to do with food. And that's what I've been doing through the whole year. But with that said, last year was a really good year for me, because thanks to the therapy, my mindset improved so much that even though I wasn't in remission like I wanted to be, and I felt like at a certain time the surgery was a failure, I don't think that now. The surgery was a success. But I had a fantastic year. I achieved some of my biggest goals. I ended up running a bunch of obstacle course races like Tough Mudder and Spartan. I went to the gym. I played with my daughter. I had such a great year, and I really learned that being in remission does not equal happiness through this journey. And that really so much of what, for me personally, dealing with HS is just mindset. HS just is. It's not gross. It's not disgusting. I don't think those things at all anymore. It's just a part of my story. It is not the story. And once I figured that out, I had such a wonderful year. One of my biggest achievements is I did a Spartan race in October of 2023, where I had to climb up a ski mountain like 8 times, and they had all these crazy obstacles, and I had stage 2 HS at the time, and I still was able to complete that. It hurt, it sucked, but I was still able to do it. Like, it didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do. I got married last year, me and that boyfriend eventually got engaged, and now we're married and we have a beautiful daughter. So HS did not stop me in any way, shape, or form from finding someone that loves me and fully accepts me, HS and all, and is very sensitive to my HS. Like, he's fantastic. I honestly live a very wonderful, normal life, even with this condition. It was just learning how to handle it mentally. Mentally handling having a chronic disease at a young age is not easy. It's not easy at all, but I'm thankful to my therapist. I am thankful to myself for putting in the work, because a therapist can tell you whatever they want, but if you're not going to try and implement it, it's quite pointless. So what now? It is now January 2024. It is the start of a new year. Me and my husband want to get pregnant this year. I know that my HS could go completely out of control after I have another baby. My plan is to seek out surgery again, and if my HS does go out of control after the second pregnancy, we're both aware that we might just be having 2 kids, which makes us both happy. We've discussed having more, but I will be happy with 2, so I want to try for another baby. With food, I am still exploring how I feel revolving around food and food triggers. What I'll be doing and documenting on my Instagram is me exploring no longer eating those nightshade vegetables. I don't eat potatoes or peppers or eggplant, but I do eat potatoes quite frequently still. So if you want to follow my little journey on seeing how I feel about maybe removing those from my diet, you can follow me there. If you made it to the end of this video, thanks. This was long, more emotional than I thought. I got my laundry folded though, so my daughter, who will be 2 next month, is going to be waking up in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to call my story there, and I guess I'll edit this tomorrow and hopefully post it. I have to make a whole YouTube channel. I don't even know how to do that. So I gotta go put my laundry away. Thanks for hanging out with me while I folded all this and talked and processed some stuff. Thanks, guys.